the authoritarian project is now finished. So it's after more than 10 years, this project is completely finished. Of course, it is not like the dictatorships of the past. It's a quite new kind of authoritarian rule where the Hungarian governing forces can efficiently hide its real character. And it has a paralyzing effect because formally it used the legal framework, they used the legal institutions, but without any keeping of the real European values behind the European legal culture.
One of the main problems with the Hungarian parliament is that because it received its mandate in an unfair election, this mandate is not credible, and partly because it is resulting the representative body is not representative. The winner-take-all method gives the parliamentary majority, the parliamentary constitutional majority, allowing the exercise unlimited power to subordinate the entire constitutional system to its own political ends.
So since 2010, it is well known that the government has taken various steps to curb judicial independence and take control over the administration of justice. And this process started with capturing the Constitutional Court and continued with containing the ordinary judiciary. And recently, the government realized that the best way, the most efficient way to control the whole ordinary judiciary is to gain control over the top tier of the judiciary, the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is the court of last instance of civil, criminal, and administrative cases. It is the most important veto player within the ordinary court system. And if the government is capable of controlling the top court, it can also contain lower level courts.
Being a rule of law violator is a great stigma still in this part of the world. So violations have a veneer of legality. Instead of admitting of what is actually happening, clear violations of the rule of law, changing laws and institutions with the sole aim of retaining power and money, because in brackets, let me mention that the Hungarian system is characterized as a kleptocracy by many authors. So illiberal governments make huge efforts to mix the rule of law and legality and argue that everything they do is okay from a legal perspective. Now, showing these veiled attempts to destroy the rule of law, systems like the Hungarian one are characterized by the literature by oxymorons such as abusive constitutionalism or illiberal democracy. Now, these oxymorons illustrate that the rule of law is just a semblance. In these systems, there is no opposition to arbitrary power, and these systems cannot be labeled as democracies based on the rule of law anymore.
Thank you very much, Petra, Zoltán, Péter, and Ágnes for clearly highlighting how the Hungarian government at this moment is violating actually the three big pillars which underpin the EU values as put in the Article 2 of the treaty. The examples posed by the three of you in this second session or second part of the session clearly highlight that there are all sorts of possibilities and tools to actually stop backsliding of the rule of law and fundamental rights and democracy in Hungary. It depends on political will of both the Commission and the Council. That is the question then is when will this happen, or what will happen if not, right? I propose we go to a number of questions which we have received in the Q&A. One is by Yuri Bude-Tavernier. How do you avoid looking at new scandals every time, even sending Hungary to court, while at the same time the basis and structures continue to backslide? When the court case is finished, the situation has gotten worse in the meantime. Isn't this a strategy of the Hungarian government? By creating small fires, we don't see the real problems because of all the smoke. Whom of you may I give the floor to perhaps briefly answer this question?
That was the message of us today, that you must concentrate on the whole picture, because so I'm a lawyer and a sociologist. I must say that the legal processes will not solve the problem alone. So the legal tools are always weak with the help of political, cultural, and even economic support for the legal tools. So in a complex case like the rule of law dismantling cannot be coped only by court cases and legal issues.
Yes, and taking up this this argument just mentioned by Zoltán, I'm not sure whether the European mechanisms could stop rule of law backsliding or make a country take a U-turn. It could slow it, I think, and it could put an end at the very minimum to the absurd situation that regimes are financed out of EU money in violation of EU values. And I think this is also what the voters in democratic countries expect their governments to do. Now, when it comes to the actual question, yes, I think this is what I meant by this red herring approach, that there is a topic raised which is sometimes harmless with regard to individual rights. Just think about this example when the government was toying with the idea of reintroducing the death penalty. No one got harmed, and then they withdrew, but they dominated the discussion with this absurdity. But sometimes it does harm masses of individuals. Just think about homophobia or the war waged against not poverty, as a normal government should do, but against the poor or other vulnerable minorities, the migrants or the refugees, or you name them, are singled out, and there is a harm. But indeed, these stories are there to reveal the real problem. At this General Affairs Council, the debate was dominated by the so-called anti-pedophile, in reality homophobic law, right? I mean, I don't have all the pieces of information. I just got the information from the news. But actually, the questions, they didn't boil down to corruption, to state capture, to judicial capture, and so on and so forth, because this was such an emotional issue that it dominated the debate. And then other step that they are doing, and I think that the colleague also asks, is yes, the government does two steps or takes two steps in dismantling the rule of law, and then withdraws a little, but just one step back, and then again, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and this is how it progresses at a slower pace than it would otherwise do.
There is a second question as well, also posed by Yuri. So he asks, what should member states and civil society do to push European institutions to react stronger and faster? Well, obviously, what we are doing today is one thing, but the question obviously is broader, and perhaps more action is needed. What would be your take on this?
I just have a very brief answer, and then I hand over to Ágnes and Zoltán. I guess they are more suited, being the members of a very important think tank in Hungary. But I think that member states could simply join the Commission in rule of law related cases. It doesn't cost a penny, it doesn't cost much effort, but it in a very symbolic way shows support for not EU institutions, but for EU values that we all stand for. And the other is, well, if the Commission remains silent in rule of law matters, technically, according to Article 259 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, member states could also start infringement proceedings against other member states. I know the Dutch government and the Finnish government were toying with this idea. In the first phase of such a procedure, the member state in question has to ask the Commission to take over the case, and in such cases, I would recommend the Commission to immediately do that and do its job as guardian of the treaties, instead of just forcing democratic member states into a diplomatic conflict with other member states. And here I hand over to my colleagues.
Just one sentence. The European citizens must consider the danger of being a member state as authoritarian logic, because the dynamism of the system is quite clear. It is hardening. So, the very end of this process is really shameful for all of the Europe, and this is a real danger. But Europe is not only a common value system, but a very dense structure of connections, civil connections, academic connections, political connections, and these kind of European institutions which are on the table now is not the only European connection system. So I think when the democracy, rule of law, constitutional European values are important for the European institutions, even in the academic sphere, the civil sphere, and the economic sphere, the European citizens and European institutions must concentrate on these values, how to help to build a much stronger common framework of these values by the help of the Hungarian and Polish and post-communist citizens and NGOs together.
Clear. Ágnes, would you like to add something?
Just one sentence, that I think the NGOs, let's say in Hungary, are doing their job. They are bringing cases before courts and calling to action the institutions in order to show to the broader audience, to the international audience, that what it means that these formerly independent institutions are no longer independent ones. So and of course they have to provide very precise information on the rule of law backsliding. So to provide reliable information, factually correct information, but in my opinion, they are doing a very responsible job in this sense. And I guess Péter wants to add something.
Yes, thanks. And just very short answer to, I think there are, of course, less legal ways to act. On the one hand, I think it's all about the money and exclusive domination of the redistribution. So one solution could be make condition for the grants under the rule of law, which already been partly achieved, and also to allow the local authorities or civil society to apply directly to the institution for common funds, bypassing the government. So this has already been initiated by European cities. So I think it could be a way. And another key of the control of the public media, of course, the support for free and independent Hungarian media is a tragic issue. So without that, it is hopeless.
The very last question is there anything that gives you hope with regard to the Hungarian question? I think it's a very appropriate question to close this webinar off with. And thank you, Peter, for your intervention on that. Perhaps I may ask Ágnes to also give a very brief answer to this question.
Yes, I mean, next year there will be general elections in Hungary, and we hope that the current electoral system is not distorted to the extent that is not possible for the opposition to defeat the current government. So we are looking forward to the next year and how. I mean, all these efforts that has been made in recent years, even at the domestic level and international level, can influence the preferences of the voters in Hungary, because the transition back to a democracy depends finally on the Hungarian voters, in my opinion.
Clear. Zoltán?
Just one sentence, which is about the future, the bright future of Hungarian democracy. The possible new democratic government from the next year will face with a very hard question how to cope with the legalistic traps in the constitutional system. So my hope is that clearing the picture in the European scene is a good option for a political and legal backing of the democratic rebuilding of the Hungarian rule of law. It will be a very hard case.
Clear. Petra, famous last words.
That's too much of a responsibility, but I do have a silver lining for you. And this is that the fakeness is finally acknowledged by European players and by our peers. The Hungarian government and other illiberal governments are using various tools to mislead also the public, but also academics. For a couple of years, we've been busy with explaining the situation to our foreign peers. And I think it also, this dismantling of the rule of law brought an appreciation of the values that we have, not taking it for granted. And it also makes democracies think about how to make themselves resilient against its internal enemies. So there are many, many lessons for the European Union and also for democratic countries to learn from the Hungarian experience. And I'm glad this is already starting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. So let's consider Hungary to be the mirror, or the case in Hungary to be the mirror for the rest of the European member states, and let's continue the work for a joint response, both from the Commission, from the member states, civil society, academia. And also, let's not forget the business community. I think that is also a very important message you gave today. There are tools, there are means. It's a matter of using them. It's a matter of political will and being timely as well, and not to wait too long. I hope with that I've summarized this very interesting and dense discussion. Thank you very much for being with us as panelists once more. And looking forward to continue our talks over the coming months, hopefully with a number of results. Thanks also to the participants for being with us this morning, and looking forward to talk to you in the next session. Have a very good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.